Hello and welcome to Mind, Body, Sleep, the podcast for anyone out there who wants to understand and recover from insomnia using a holistic perspective. I'm Beth Kendall, your host. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special episode where we have another Mind, Body, Sleep mentorship alum joining us today. Welcome, Majken.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. I'm always so happy when you guys reach out and want to be on the podcast because honestly, you guys can say this stuff better than I can a lot of times. And I think hearing these teachings from different people through different lenses can make such a difference to someone going through insomnia right now.
Yeah. So, that's really what I want to do. I want to, just share my own story and I guess give hope and then back up your approach because it really worked very well for me.
I'm so glad, and I'm especially interested to hear from you what your journey has been like since completing the program, because that was almost exactly a year ago, right? Last September. Because you joined in June. June of 2023. Yeah. Okay. I'm so excited to dig in, but let's start with let's give us the lay of the land. How did insomnia start for you and what was that like?
Yeah. So, it started back in my early 20s. So I'm in my mid 30s now. And I had my first experience with insomnia in my early 20s. And really it was, it's not up on me as it does for a lot of people, I think, but it came after a stressful life event. We had some pretty serious illness in the family. And I had recently moved to Copenhagen. I live in Denmark, far away from where I'm from, etc. And then it started showing up around, I think I took a trip. I was studying anthropology at the time. We took a trip to Greece and doing some field work. And it really started there on that trip. And then, I think very early on, somehow the connection between the symptoms, so just difficulty falling asleep for me, was made with stress. So, I'm very fortunate to have a very loving and caring mom. She's also been in the psychiatric system for many years. And it's been both good and bad because, I call my mom whenever something is up and she makes her own conclusions. And I think probably that's where the conclusion came from. And then, she was like, just really, you need to, your body needs to calm down, your nervous system needs to, just chill and you'll come home and it'll get better. And then it got a little better. It showed up again around exams. It went away for a bit and then 6 months I went by and then I had exams again and it became really severe at that time. And this was, I was going to say this so many years ago. So of course we had the internet, but I don't remember at that time to be falling into the research trap as such. But I guess I was still feeling a lot of anxiety around the symptom and really trying to fix it, right? And then I think also with this, with the backup of my mom, she was like, you need to seek help at your doctor. And I went there and it was kind of a story where they then said, this is probably stress related to exams. You're a young student, overachieving, blah, blah, blah. And then, I kind of got through different parts of the system until, not the system, I changed.
The traditional avenues.
That's it. Yeah. And then it ended up with a diagnosis, I think at the end of, it was the summer. And I remember after a really bad couple of days without sleep, I went to the ER because I was so scared and crying and really I had no idea what was going on. And I went to the ER and I think they probably gave me some mild antipsychotic, at least some very strong pills. And I should say at that time I was also on sleeping pills, but they had stopped working,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I then at that point I kind of pulled the plug. I went home to my parents' place, which was also kind of the advice, right? Okay, if you're under a lot of stress, you need to just pull the plug and you need to just like get your mind and body like in a relaxed state. And for that,
yeah,
for me, the impulse was to go back to my parents' place, which was kind of a safe place to be, and it didn't get better over the summer. And then I ended up at another doctor and with the diagnosis of mild, I guess, depression. And that came mainly because this doctor, she was like, she started me on melatonin. It didn't work. She was like, let's start an antidepressant. So it was mirtazapine. I think it's probably called different things. But anyway, it worked instantly. And that is because, I later found out that it is used as an off-brand for insomnia, right? And what it did for me, I think, was just to knock me out. I think it knocks your nervous system out. And then the fear disappeared, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then I think it was like, okay, the conclusion is this is a stress / a depression, like mild depression. And I was on the antidepressants for, I think, about a year. And then I stopped them. And everything was fine. And so I think it was really this pill, right? That was like, okay, that's just working for me. And ever since then, I remember like over the years, I was like, what if this stuff comes back? Because it was it was so debilitating. It was really like, the state I was in, it was. Yeah, I felt like a zombie, like that. You're existing in the world, but not really,
Yeah. Yeah. It creates an imprint, it definitely does. And it can follow you around, like, oh, is that ever going to come back? Or, what if that ever comes back? So I totally get it. And, I'm sure that was really perplexing when you went on the meds that were initially for depression, but then here they help you with your sleep.
Yeah.
And you were probably like, well, this is great, but not really knowing still the underlying driver for insomnia. So, so you got better and then, they worked great. And then did you go off the meds or what happened then?
Yeah. So I went off the meds and it was really like a slow, like,
safer.
Going off the meds slowly. And then it was fine, and for about 10 years, it was fine. And it was, I kind of revisited in my mind. I was like, what if this stuff comes back? And I was like, okay, I just have this medicine, so I don't worry about it. I have the medicine.
Yeah.
So, that makes sense when this second episode comes about in my life, which was after I became a mom for the second time, and my daughter was 3 months old, and it was an intense time in my life, like it, not only having a baby, but a second one. And also I'm even in motherhood, I'm really working on, on decreasing the pressure that I put on myself. But I think at that early time, I did put a lot of pressure on myself, and of course it showed up in sleep. And, with my son, my first born, I didn't, you wake up, sleep was bad, but it never got to the point where it was always because of the baby, it was never me. And then I just remember one night with my daughter, and she was about 3 months old, and my partner wasn't there. I was alone with them, and it was a full night of not sleeping. And it was the first time where I had like, I had a little bit leading up to that, but it was the first time I was like, shit, like this is not the baby, this is me. And I completely panicked.
Yep.
And I just, I feel like it was just the fear showing up. Like you said, like, I don't know, at some point in your show, you said like fear showing up in another pair of shoes. And this was just fear showing up in like super giant boots, like really, really big.
Here I am.
And at that time, I didn't see it as fear, I just I instantly was like, shit, I can't. I'm the mother of these two very young kids. I need to function, like I can't go down like this. And so what I did, I instantly called next morning, after not having slept, I first called my mom. And then I called my doctor, and I got an appointment the next day, and I went to her and I said, this is what I'm experiencing. I had it before. I can't go through this right now. I need to go on the meds.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, okay, like we can do that. That's fine. You could also just, because it was diagnosed as depression or slash stress, she was like, you can also see like cognitive therapy. That's what they recommend, as a first step before you go on meds.
Mm-hmm.
And we can see this after as an, kind of postpartum depression or postpartum reaction. So, but I was quite determined. I was like, I want to go on the meds. I can't, yes, therapy, yes, but I want to go on the meds.
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine. And, well, the meds, they really meant, I'm not going through this again, like they're going to help me straight away.
Yeah.
And okay, so I went on the meds, and I also started some therapy. And then for about 6 months, it was fine. I didn't have any symptoms until it was New Year's Eve. And I can just see it now, it's completely natural. Like, it's completely natural to be affected by sleep, because we were at a friend's house. It was in the city, in Copenhagen, in a neighborhood with like so many fireworks throughout the night. And I had even a baby still. And I had my two, young children. Yeah. And I didn't sleep through the night. And he was like, yeah, but of course, But at that time, I didn't see it as, and that's okay, because I didn't know. But but I then saw it as the meds are not working. And that's where I really freaked out. That's where it really. Yeah. Then from there, we're moving into kind of it's also an emotional time for me to talk about, because it was such until I encountered you, it was really a time filled with such tense anxiety, and I mean, all these attempts of fixing this, and attempts ranging from going up in the doses of the meds. Yeah. And that was also, recommended by my doctor. And, I started all these kind of protective measures for my sleep. I started not sleeping usually with co-sleep. I started sleeping away from my partner and my kids, stopping coffee, stopping and even like, I don't know, it was like, then I read like, you need to exercise every morning, whatever. So I went on a run with my, daughter, like sleeping every morning. Yeah. You need to take cold bath. So I did that. And all these attempts of fixing it, which, made it worse. And that's what I can see. But there was just no advice.
Yeah.
And you me in another direction,
Yeah, you didn't know. I mean, that's what they tell us to do. So that's what we do. And we do it earnestly, and we do it well. And, we're very determined and disciplined with all of it. And, but we're really not getting the full picture of what's going on. And that just can ramp it up more, like, okay, none of this is really helping. In fact, what we're unintentionally doing is accommodating insomnia more. Yeah. And I was so curious when you were talking, and I don't think I've ever asked this, but at the time, do you remember what you thought the problem was? Did you just feel it was just strictly a physical problem, or or depression, or postpartum still, or what were your thoughts on it at the time? If you
I was pretty confused. I mean, the thing about, I think it occurred to me a couple of months into this process that there was something about the fact that it only being sleep, and I remember that. Yeah. I remember that also in my first episode, this kind of wonder, like, okay, but I'm actually not, so what does it mean to be in depression? I mean, of course, I don't know that, but this kind of, okay, it's really about sleep and not so many other symptoms. And at some point that led me to CBTI. And it's
Oh,
funny,
yeah.
it's funny that you asked me that, because I think I was also so guided by, doctors, and then, my dear mom, who was also just really trying everything to help,
Yeah, I'm
but
sure. I'm sure.
but having her perspective on
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
kind of symptoms, which are, yeah, like strictly within kind of the diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
scheme, and yeah, I can see that did trap me. And that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to come on the show, is that, I also see other people, or have encountered other people around me being in this kind of trap where sleep is the main symptom.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but then, because, when stress, I mean, it's just a tricky thing,
Mm-hmm.
because of course you can, like, how do you distinguish between these kind of
Mm-hmm.
experiences or conditions? But at least for me, it was a trap, or kind of at least a situation where I could have gotten help earlier, I think, if it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't because it was diagnosed as stress or depression, because
Yeah.
in the end, the meds work, but they only work because they knocked me out, and they took fear away, and then until they didn't work, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and sometimes I think though it's okay to go down those other routes first, because it usually people find the mentorship or find me usually when they've
Mm.
exhausted all those other things, because this
Yeah.
is much more of you know what I mean? Like this is
Yeah.
could be perceived as the harder way around. This is like, oh, that sounds like a lot of work, a lot of internal
Yeah.
work versus, well, I can just do this clear cut approach, and just
Yeah.
sounds, and just, I think naturally as human beings, we're much more inclined to take the path of least resistance versus
Yeah.
like, oh, like having a whole re-education on insomnia and everything else. But
Yeah.
this really, it is the fastest way in a roundabout
Mm.
way. But yeah, all of that just makes so much sense. And then, so you were
Mm.
saying you ran into CBTI, and
Yeah.
how was that for you? Because
Yeah. I mean,
that can go a lot of ways too.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I ran into like these online programs, and I think, yeah. I mean, I paid too much for something that was like a text-based service. And I mean,
Yeah.
I did follow it quite strictly for a while, like these, like, whatever, 5.5 hours of sleep every night.
Oh
And
yeah, the sleep restriction. Yeah.
yeah. And, but I mean, yeah, it led me to then, I think maybe it was the third program or something, where there was something about acceptance and commitment theory in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that started to resonate. And then I think, if I had ever had a sleepless night or just a really rough night, I would just instantly go on Google whenever the night was
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
And I would just research for, like, I don't know, 45 minutes, 1 hour, like completely like what
Yeah.
you're not supposed to do. But anyway, I did that. And under one of these research, kind of just trying to crunch this, I did encounter your website.
Mm-hmm.
And your free email course, and I signed up for it. And I think, like, really soon after that, I was like, okay, I need this. And at that point, I was really, yeah, I mean, as you are when you're just exhausted
Mm-hmm.
of this run in your life, I just, yeah, whatever it took to fix it. So yeah, I signed up for your course, and I offer for your mentorship. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I started. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad you did. I'm so glad you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And so that was back in June of
Yeah.
2023.
Yeah.
And then we worked together, and that was wonderful. And so you would have graduated in September,
Yeah.
a year ago. And so, like, tell us how the process, like going through the mentorship, and what your recovery process was like, since we have like a span of time to sort of
Yeah.
look at with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I mean, I remember just eagerly waiting. I think it was every Tuesday that you put out a new video, and yeah, just sitting there waiting. And I mean, I think maybe it was week 2 or something where it's really this kind of learning about responses and focusing on your responses. And that started quite quickly to resonate with me. And I remember one thing I didn't mention was that I had also isolated myself socially throughout months of just, both taking like 1 month in a vacation home and like away from everyone, and kind of the same kind of safety-seeking behavior, and but also at home I had to spend really protecting myself. But I remember, I think it was about 1 week after starting the program, it was my birthday, and I was like, I'm going to invite people. And I would not have done that, I would just, because it was this kind of, you need to protect your energy, you need to, when you're in treatment for stress or depression, it's all about like spending as little energy as possible. Like, I don't know, just really being in this kind of protective scheme also. And I think from there on, I really took this idea of challenging myself and focusing on the responses. And I will say, of course, those 2-3 months over the summer, many bumpy nights. And I had also, I didn't work at the time. I mean, I was on maternity leave, but then I had kind of extended that into sick leave because I was simply not, I thought, capable of working, or functioning. And then I started work, I think also about a week after the first office call, because it was like, okay, it seems like I just need to attack life, and no matter how hard it is. And yes, I started working, I started socializing again. We had a trip about, I think, end of July to France where my partner is from. I remember thinking we were going to a wedding, and it was a super stressful full day of travel with 2 kids. And the wedding was the day after, and we were sleeping in this cottage that we had rented. And first of all, I bumped my head during the night and got some kind of migraine attack. And then I had a full night of not sleeping. And I still went to the wedding the day after, and I was like, I'm not going to give a fuck. Like, I'm just going to go to the wedding. And that, I think, was actually my last full night of no sleep. And I'm kind of like, I just would, without your support, without the program, I would just have stayed far away from any trip to France, any kind of like travel with young kids, but I just did it. And it was like, okay, I'm not going to care, like it can come, but I'm going to do this because this is what life is. And of course, there were like days and nights with frustration, but I really just took this idea of focusing on life and focusing less on this
on insomnia.
And
sleep in general.
And like I just stopped trying to fix it and focus on other things. And I think there were many learnings that resonated with me throughout your program. But I think just focus on life, focus on what's going on around me, on work, on kids, attending parties. And then, it slowly lost its power over me, and sleep slowly started to just be what it was, like something that came, and sometimes it was hard, and sometimes not hard, but sometimes, I would have nights with little sleep, and that was okay. It wasn't the kind of the emotional attachment, the anxiety around it. It went away.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times, sleep did you feel like a lot of the program integrated after the program, like after the 3 months is when, through that process of living life, those principles and teachings kept integrating?
Yeah, for sure I did. And I remember now we had a call, I think back in January or something. I had a
Okay. Yeah. That's right.
We had a speed bump. Yeah.
Oh, good. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, because I know sometimes when people, they come through and they're sleeping really well and things are going really well. And then it isn't unusual at all to get a speed bump, even several months in. And it can kind of throw you, because you think, oh, I just thought I was just completely done with this. And it can just like kind of knock the wind out of you a little bit. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it did. I mean, yeah, it was after, Christmas and like kind of intense family holiday time. And I remember it was a week or two after, and I remember I was like, yeah, I booked an appointment with you. And I think I wrote you an email and you're like, yeah, that's normal, but let's talk.
Yeah.
And a lot of people experience this around this time. And yeah, we talked and I just really, yeah, I appreciate what you said. You said, I mean, this is, it's not anything that you're doing wrong. It's just normal that it can come. And
Yeah.
you also, yeah, I said something, you will have more clarity at the end of it. But I did start to have a little bit of the fixing behavior. I did,
Yeah.
not to the same extent as before, but I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to download this book or whatever,
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, fine. But then I had the call with you and I kind of went back into the acceptance of this being completely normal, that it was my brain looking out for me, and yeah, it would pass. And I think since then I've had many choppy nights, and I mean I recently we celebrated our wedding this summer, and it was quite a stressful time, and I had choppy nights, and but I'm able to have them now and not care about it, or not moving into fix it mode, and just be like, yeah, it's fine. It's a normal part of life. And even though some people never experience it, a lot of people do.
I'd say most people do.
Yeah. But when you are experiencing insomnia, you don't really see that, it's a very, very normal reaction on the part of your brain and your body to be in intense times having sleeping, but
that's well said. And I mean, everything we're saying about Christmas, I mean, I think, let's be real, I think even people without insomnia can have some rough sleep just with all of it, like just the whole thing. Can the travel, the family dynamics, all of it. And it's so common. And as you move further and further in your recovery, like the sensitivity to those choppy nights just gets less. There's sensitivity to like just normal sleep disruptions. Like they will just become, normal sleep disruptions again. And your brain doesn't, just go into like full activation mode anymore. And I'm so glad. I'm just so glad to hear that. And, were there any silver linings that came with the experience of insomnia for you, Majken?
Yeah, I think I thought about a couple, but I think one thing that's really important for me in my life now is this notion of, I think you call it brain drama at some point, or the kind of the ability to look at what my brain is telling me and sometimes just don't care. And that's not only sleep, that's also other areas in my life where I can be like, oh, now my brain is completely like freaking out about this or this or that.
Yes. My brain does this frequently. Yes.
And I can just be like, yeah, okay, but maybe it's going to be fine, and move on and kind of label it as brain drama and just not go along with it. And that's such a freeing skill to have, in fact. And I remember, before, also in cognitive therapy, like this notion of that you are not your thoughts. And I never really understood it. I know you hear it so much.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not your thoughts and emotions, but what does it actually mean? And I mean, going through this, I really understand it now. I really understand it. And it's so helpful in, like in parenting, in even the worries I can have about many things in life.
Yeah.
I have the skill to look at all this brain drama and kind of be like, well, maybe it's going to be fine. We'll see. And I'm very, so definitely that's a silver lining. And then I think also just in your teachings, there is also like focus on life and joy, joy in little things. And it sounds so, banal, but it is really all there is. It's being able to really, I think we said once, like plug into the flow, and even in the flow also just experiencing all these joys that are offered to us every day in nature, in relationships, in solitude, in food, in work, whatever. But and it's not, I don't remember it all the time, and I think it's a lifelong learning and to really appreciate that and to be with that. But I think definitely your program has also kind of put me further on the course of that. So yeah. Plenty of silver linings. Yeah.
Oh, so well said. I'm glad that you had some silver linings. You know, I remember I had a guest a while back and she was like, oh, I don't know if there were any silver linings, but you know, I mean, sometimes there are, and sometimes they come later, you know, and it can be even much later, but those are beautiful reflections. So yeah. Well, this feels like a wonderful place to wrap up this beautiful interview, Majken. I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story and vulnerability with us. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Beth. I mean, yeah. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Yeah, you are. It's my pleasure to be able to do this work and then to be able to talk to you guys a year later is just icing on the cake. So if any of the other Mind Body Sleep alums out there want to come on the show, send me an email. I would love to have you. Until next time, I'm Beth Kendall, and you've been listening to the Mind Body Sleep podcast. Bye for now. Thanks for being here today. If you love what you heard on today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast. And if you need more support with your sleep, join me in the Mind Body Sleep Mentorship. This 3-month one-on-one program will transform your relationship with sleep so you can get back to living the life that you love, free from the fear of not sleeping. Head on over to bethkendall.com for more details. I'll see you next time.